So just doing a sound check here.
Hear you. Can you hear us?
We can hear you, yes.
I can hear you.
I'll turn the camera on just temporarily so that you can see.
Yeah. I've got
Good to go. I'm just gonna mute again.
Leo,
So I'll take it when we appear online in the picture box there, that means we're ready to go.
That sounds great.
We are online now.
All right, Chair, we are online.
So welcome everyone to our February board meeting. I'm zooming in remotely from the traditional territories of the Ojibwe and the Algonquin peoples today.
Sorry.
So
Someone,
can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
do you have the Zoom meeting going in the background, Gordon?
Uh, don't believe so. You got echo?
I'll do it twice.
That's normally a computer at your side if you're hearing me twice, that you got two sets of speakers on with a delay.
I believe Eric has cleared the speaker system, Chair.
There you go.
We can proceed.
Well, I guess if there's an echo, it means I get two votes. Isn't that how it works?
John was
So-
doing everything twice, so.
So if I could get a motion to approve the agenda circulated.
So moved, Ward 58.
And looks like trustee Chenoweth, I think I saw his hand up. Anyone opposed? Carried. A motion to receive the minutes of the open meeting held January 15th.
So moved, Rainer.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. Any business arising from the minutes, trustee Rayner?
No.
Thank you. You have two reports for the closed meeting held January 15th and the closed trustee meeting held January 21st in your package as well for information. And we have two presentations tonight. I will turn things over to the superintendent to first, I believe first up is the foster parent recruitment program. I have that right?
You have that right. So Renata, you are online and I think I don't think this one is Renata's. That one's. Okay, Renata, I'm not sure if you have a presentation or not, if you would just wanted to speak to it.
I do, if that's okay. I just have a quick PowerPoint to share as I kind of go through some of this.
Okay, Eric will just give you the right to share your screen.
Awesome, thank you so much.
I should be able to share. Try.
Here we go. Fantastic. Are we good to go?
We are.
Yeah.
Move that so you don't get a weird block. Perfect. So thank you all for having me. I'm super excited to be here today. I am grateful to actually be coming to you from the traditional and unceded territories of the Secwepemc peoples in Kamloops, where I am grateful to live, work, and play every day. Foster parents play an integral role in creating the foundation a child needs to develop into a confident adult, and their influences can often last a lifetime. What we're hoping to do and we're looking for in supporting some of these vulnerable kiddos is find foster parents who have a capacity to care for sibling groups, who are passionate about caring for children and youth, who are interested in supporting children and youth who identify as 2S LGBTQIA+, who identify as Indigenous, and who are skilled at caring for kiddos with complex support needs and diverse abilities. We're also looking for folks who might be interested in providing relief care for children and youth on weekends. Foster parents provide a loving, nurturing, and supportive environment for children and youth who temporarily cannot live with their own families for a variety of reasons, including families who have asked for help with parenting during a time of crisis, or families who need a specific or periodic help in caring for their children. And we know that the best possible environment for a child is to be in the safe care of family. When a child comes into foster care, the goal is to look for a short-term stay until the kiddo can return home to biological parents when it's safe to do so. And we're looking to continue building capacity and increasing the number of caregivers in all of our communities so that when a child has to come into care, they're not being placed out of community. We want kiddos to maintain connection to family and culture and their communities at all times. There's a couple of different options. Relief care is a really great way to kind of introduce folks into fostering. Relief care typically happens on weekends, not always, but most of the time. And is a great way to support other foster parents in allowing them to have a break and to support some of those pieces. Relief care often occurs in your home, and in some cases, foster parents will go into another foster parent's home to care for the children in the home they're living in. We're also looking for emergency caregivers that can provide care on little notice, often within a 24-hour period, and usually for about 1 to 14 days until a permanent plan can be arranged. And then we're looking for regular caregivers and kinship caregivers, so folks living with family members. We have a couple of different age groups depending on what folks are interested, what level of kiddos folks are interested in supporting. So we have our safe babies, which is 0 to 2, our 3 to 11s, and our 12 and ups. So to the world, foster parents may be just one person, but to one person, they may be the world. We just wanted to also address a couple of myths in fostering when we're looking for caregivers. We have many caregivers who are single parent households, and anyone over the age of 19 can become a foster parent. And you can rent or own your home, and for caregivers whose home maybe isn't set up to provide that, they can do relief care in someone else's home. We also want caregivers to know that they get to determine the age, gender, and number of children who come into their home. So it may not necessarily be easy, but it will absolutely be worth it. And every child is one caring adult away from being a success story. What we're hoping is to work with the school district to provide this image on the screen here in either your newsletters or your social media or any other support around recruiting caregivers as we work together to support the most vulnerable children in our community. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me tonight.
Well, thank you, Renata. Questions that people have. I think that last slide, it would be fairly easy for us to have that up in our material and even talking with our PACs about into the school newsletters as well, but I'll open it up for discussion.
Questions, Assistant Superintendent Kempston, and then Trustee Rainer.
Hi, Renata. Thank you for the presentation. I just have a question. Are you representing the Ministry of Children and Family as well as Schwacom Family? How does that work?
So I'm here with Interior Community Services. We are a program contracted by the ministry to support caregivers in the interior of BC. So I also support caregivers in Merritt for both the ministry and for Schwacom.
Okay, great. That helps me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Renata. It's really a great thing you're doing. I'm just curious, who does criminal checks? Would that be
So no, that would go through the ministry or it would go through Schwacom. So what we're hoping is the barcode that's on the last image I showed you will take folks to kind of a request for more information page, and then we'll connect them to whichever agency they want, who will then take responsibility for doing the criminal record checks and the original home studies and all of those pieces.
Thank you.
So when you talk about the ministry, we could connect people in Princeton through outreach with you too. Would you also be the contact for Interior Community Services in the southern part of our district?
So Princeton actually runs through, I think, Okanagan Foster Parents Association.
Okay.
And I could certainly provide them that contact information if they needed it.
Okay, that'd be great, I think, because we're in both communities. So
yeah, I could certainly get you the Princeton information.
Trustee Chenoweth has a question.
Thanks, Renata. I'm wondering if you could share, like, what is the need like in the Nicola Valley?
So need across the province is huge. Nicola Valley in particular around number of homes and building capacity within the community is huge, and we need more homes to make sure that kiddos are staying in their community. So I would say in particular for the Nicola Valley, it's quite a large need.
Thanks.
Question, we're looking for board support to put that advertisement on the website.
Newsletters
and in
and
our
social-
newsletter,
And
okay.
social media.
For how long and, yeah, what do you think, Renata?
It would be whatever you folks deem appropriate.
So Superintendent Lawrence, would it be appropriate, as we're looking at that, to raise Jane's hand to be that connectivity? I'm just
Sure,
asking this
sure.
totally out of the blue.
Yeah, we can have Jane coordinate, and then Simone and Cassie can help us distribute the message, website, social media, and then newsletters.
So I'm in support of it.
Yeah.
Do you want to put motion, Superintendent Lawrence?
I don't know, what do you think, Gordon? Do we need a motion for this one? I think it's just,
I think it's just like a lot of times we would just have the superintendent, if things were being distributed, that would normally fall to the superintendent operationally. But we thought with the foster care need, it was important to have Renata talk to the board as a whole. So that's why we made sure it was part of the agenda tonight. So I'm seeing nods, no heads going side to side. So I think Renata, we've got it teed up with senior district staff and getting that material from you to them and moving forward.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Renata, I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you do. And we learned from Dr. Jennifer Charlesworth that this is maybe our most important work, taking care of our most vulnerable littles. And thank you for using the little term littles. Thank you, Renata.
Thank you so much. And then Gordon, will you just share my info with whoever needs it?
it's okay, Renata, I have it, so
Oh,
I'll
perfect.
share it with Jane and Cassie and Simone.
Fantastic. Have a fabulous night, everybody.
Okay. And thanks again, Renata. And I believe that brings us to the Princeton District Teachers Union President Trina Mullen and the proposed district calendar presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
You can come here. What? No, it's right here. And you've got presentation area.
Right by here.
I'll sit beside you. Sure.
Everybody wants to hear run.
Excellent. I'll just get comfortable here. Okay. No, first I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity. My name is Trina Mullen. I taught in another school district in British Columbia for 25 years and then moved here 5.5 years ago, well, to Princeton and joined your school district. I was at the high school, PSS, for 5 years, teaching digital arts. I have a master's in multimedia and that I got in Paris. So I was also a French teacher at the school. And this year our president, past president, came back to the high school because he has now two children in the high school, and we kind of switched places. So he's there and I'm kind of in the president office. So I should also say in French, j'ai le plaisir et le privilège d'être ici avec vous ce soir. So merci beaucoup. I also have the privilege and the honor to be representing teachers from Princeton and my membership with the Princeton District Teachers Union. And with the purpose of advocating for the inclusion, as the slide says, to include professional development days in the regular school or work year while maintaining a 2-week spring break. And so tonight's presentation is just to provide feedback on the draft of next year's school calendar, which we presented at the last board meeting, and is the beginning of what I hope will be a conversation and a continued dialogue. And so the slides that I have tonight aren't really points; they're just more the themes of what I'll be discussing. So just refer to those. And I guess I'll just start with the next slide, which was backing up one, just local history. So back in 1987, the picture on the left, I have this framed in my house now because that's where our office is. I was in grade 11, and that's when the PDTU, the Princeton District Teachers Union, became recognized as its own kind of local by the BCTF, the BC Teachers Federation. I was in grade 11 at the time, and next month I get to officially qualify for the seniors discount at Shoppers Drug Mart on Thursdays. So that was a little while ago. We've been around for a while. And then the certificate that you see on the right kind of shows that when we amalgamated, when our Princeton school district came a part of Nicholas Hill Community School District, that was in 1995. And so that was at the beginning of my teaching career. So again, it's been quite a while, but we weren't always in the same entity. There were kind of two separate histories that they kind of merged. Now, I have also inherited lots of files, and in those files, as I look through them, it looks like there was a conversation back in 2003, 2004 about Merit, who had, it seems like from what I've read, Summer Institute, which are the professional development days in the summer, of that practice and that schedule coming to Princeton. That we at the time in Princeton did not have that same Summer Institute that you have scheduled now. So it doesn't seem when I look that Summer Institute was a direct result of there becoming a 2-week spring break. I know in the previous school district I worked in, that happened in 2010, and it happened in quite a few districts around the province as a cost saving measure, frankly, because if you extended the spring break from 1 to 2 weeks, you didn't have to heat buildings for a second week, you didn't have the TTOC costs, some of the costs were alleviated. But as I've been talking to people, people's memories are different, and I haven't found the exact document. I have a motion passed by Chair Swan and Trustee Rayner saying in 2014 that, oh, next year we're going to adopt that 2-week spring break. But then some folks recall, like, we didn't have it, and then we went back to, or we had a 2-week spring break, and then we went back to a 1-week spring break, and then we went back to 2. So I'm not totally clear on the history. Maybe you can help me with that a little bit. That's kind of like a question mark that I have. In terms of pedagogy, so we can go on to the next slide, which is, of course, us teachers think about it all the time, like our practice of teaching and the methods in which we teach. This was actually taken, this picture, last month at the Copper Pit in Princeton. We had a little just appreciation dinner, and I was really bad. I kind of took the picture after some people had left already. I'm like, darn, I didn't take a picture yet. But just some of our new teachers, TTOCs, and also our mentors and mentees. So all the things that when you're thinking of new people coming into the profession, supporting them, recruiting people, and retaining folks. And so that's some of our people there. So a 2-week spring break versus a 1-week spring break does mean that when you extend the spring break a week, it is both teachers and students who kind of lose that instructional time. So there's that week that's taken an extra week for spring break. So in response, many school districts in BC, including the one I used to teach in, we added a few minutes to the to each daily calendar, like the daily schedule, to make up for that extra week. I think it was like 3 or 4 minutes. It wasn't a lot of time. So that was my experience. And so then here in this district, it seems that it's just teachers that are asked to make up that time and not instructional time as teachers and students. That's one question. Like, why aren't we kind of, just making up for that instructional time and it's just teachers? In the past, the School Act required a minimum number of days of instruction, and that's since changed. So currently the minimum amount of instructional time is measured in hours, and you can kind of look that up, and it's different for depending on what level of education, whether it's elementary, secondary, or distance education. So for example, 185 days, as you show on the draft calendar of in-session instruction. At PSS, for example, it's 315 minutes a day. You times that by 185 days, and you get over 970 hours, which is actually more than the minimum amount. So we do have time to build in, so to say, like some other use of that time. Professional development also is a process, and it's a journey, and it's not an event. It's not something you just check off and say, oh, I did my professional development for the year, done. It's something you're constantly doing. It's ongoing, and it would be beneficial to have the time to build on one's learning or learning collaboratively with colleagues during the school year. Professional development can be more meaningful and effective also once the educators have actually met their students. You're building relationships with them, you become familiar with what their needs are, and you've confirmed what subjects you're actually going to be teaching. Sometimes we think what we know we're going to be doing in June the following year, and then things kind of change in September. Professional development days can be looked forward to as a time to also recharge and connect with colleagues and just gather inspiration that can then be transferred into positive energy being infused into our classrooms and learning spaces. A commitment to ongoing professional development is reflected in student achievement. So ongoing professional development throughout a school year allows the possibility of creating professional learning communities with the focus being on student learning and achievement. And I didn't make up that term, like PLC is a widely known term by Brooke Dufour, and actually with the Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development, the ASCD, they got a great article kind of online that's kind of easily found, kind of explaining that. But again, in my previous school, going, oh my goodness, it was, yeah, over 10 years, over a decade now, we began developing also collaborative time into our weekly schedule. So we'd get the more senior students, our role models, to kind of take care of the grade 8s and 9s. Well, one department said, well, okay, we teachers will walk around, make sure everything's going okay. But the rest of you teachers, you're released to actually get together. You, in different groups, you can choose what you're going to focus on, but you had to let your administration know what exactly are you going to be working on that's going to nurture student achievement, something measurable, something that we can see, and different folks could take different projects on, and it could be cross-curricular. And also with the ASCD, and I think it was largely due to that collaboration time we had. We were also a community school, a high school. So we had a teacher basically whose job and responsibilities were to take care of the other needs of students, not just the academic, but if it was a refugee or immigrant family, if they needed some childcare while they had to go see the dentist or take care of some official documentation or a meeting somewhere, we kind of had that umbrella to try and just take care of all of those needs. We actually won, as a Canadian school, the Whole Child Award in 2012. And some of us got to go to Chicago and kind of accept that. And I really do think it's also because of that professional learning community that we had active to really respond to the needs of our students. So the next slide is just about community building and words that are not just words. I mean, I think we're all thinking about how do you recruit teachers to where we live, and how do you retain educators as well. And so this was a view from my French classroom. You can see it's a beautiful place. We live in this beautiful place, and you want people to also want to come here. So why did I come here? I kind of grew up in a place like this in Saskatchewan. I have lots of ranchers in my family. My dad was a farm boy, and it just kind of felt kind of like where I had grown up, and that is something that drew me here. So professional development days help to build professional learning communities and allow time for connection and cross-curricular collaboration, which I mentioned. In recruiting and working to retain teachers, school-based professional development can be a welcoming experience. So currently, however, the first Pro D day that most new Princeton teachers experience is in Merritt here, and they usually don't know anyone when they arrive or which teachers are from their assigned school. So finding living accommodations can also be challenging for new teachers moving to Princeton to work. If you're renting, you may only have a place to live at the beginning of September. So rent starts September, you have a place to stay there. Summer Institute, though, is in August. And so that can mean added costs for teachers who usually, if they're new teachers, are a little lower on that salary grid in terms of, you know, the money they're going to be making. My experience was I was still living in Coquitlam. We weren't getting possession of our house till the end of September. So I left at 4:30 in the morning to get here for breakfast time. I didn't know a soul. Luckily, I did sit beside someone who happened to be a teacher at the school that I was going to at PSS. I stayed in I drove back to Princeton, stayed in a hotel, because the next day after the first day of Summer Institute, that was our school day. So, and then I stayed in a hotel that night as well. And so it was a couple nights of hotel and some mileage as well. So teachers who are hired after Summer Institute are also told that they will not receive that time in lieu that happened before they were hired, and they will need to make up that time for professional development, or they won't get that time off in spring break that other folks do. So having professional development days included in the school or work year would allow for, you know, a more welcoming approach when you're recruiting new teachers. Not, hi, welcome to our district. You missed something in the summer, you're gonna have to make up that time, but just welcome. You just get to say welcome and have a great start. Teachers in the district with scheduled medical procedures as well, who are ill or are on a day designated for Summer Institute, or they have a medical procedure that's scheduled for that day, have been informed that maybe they won't be able to use that as a sick day. They'll also have to make up that time at spring break, or make up that Pro D time. So again, Pro D days within the school year would allow for more welcoming and just supportive conversations, again, within our educational community. Princeton teachers cannot claim mileage for the travel required unless they use their own Pro-D account. So you can use your own Pro-D account to cover those costs. But if you were to cover the mileage costs for professional development, that would amount to more than half of the $220 that you receive per year. Teachers this year did not have access to those funds actually till January. So again, if you're a new teacher, you're making this big move, you've got some extra mileage costs, you're really not going to maybe see your professional development funds for a few months, and you'll just have to cover those costs on your own. The general population also assumes that teachers don't work in the summer months in July and August. And this is the case for the vast majority of our colleagues in the province. So in British Columbia, it is a bit of an anomaly to have a summer institute that you're required to do. This includes our families have that assumption. And so important family events can be planned, but our local teachers may not be able to participate due to our local school calendar that includes Summer Institute. This is another outcome that can isolate our teachers from their supports and communities and does not benefit efforts towards recruitment and retention. And again, there's just one more slide saying what a beautiful place. So this is just our view from outside the art room. I mean, Princeton's just a great place, and just the more reasons we can have to, I think, to bring people there and encourage them to stay better. I don't have a slide for the next part, but I'll also just to mention that our collective agreement and board policy both support the notions, this brought forward by the Princeton District Teachers Union and Princeton teachers, my colleagues and my members. And I think they kind of reflect our shared values and working relationship. So not to go into too much detail, but the collective agreement does say that non-instructional days shall be considered as instructional days for the contract purpose. And the board is to provide 5 days of professional development time during the regular school year, which is actually the Tuesday after Labor Day, and it goes till the last day in June. So during that time. And board policy, which we're currently in discussions and reviewing, says that the Board of Education believes that the professional development of teachers is an integral part of the educational program and should provide opportunities which will enable and motivate teachers to maintain a high level of professional competence. So a couple of objectives in there that kind of relate to this conversation is to establish ongoing needs assessment process, something ongoing, and also to encourage communication on professional development matters that is effective within the district. And that's all that I wanted to kind of introduce as starting a conversation. So again, I just want to really thank you for your consideration sincerely. And for all of these reasons, the PDTU membership looks forward to having professional development days, once again, included in the regular school year while maintaining a 2-week spring break for these mentioned reasons. And thank you, because you're the ones who get to decide. So thank you for listening. And if you have any questions.
I just wrote a lot of notes. Oh, it's great. Chair, I have a question and a comment, but do you have anything right now, Chair, or? I don't hear. Okay, so can I just hear this
There, I've
again?
unmuted myself.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, go ahead.
So I'm just going to ask if, I think you had some comments, Leah, and then if anyone else, and then I was thinking in our calendar, in our board meeting, we've got, we would perhaps move 7D up before 7A because it would be a nice match, because that is the discussion on the district calendar after people had a chance to have further discussion with Trina here.
Okay, so can I just confirm what I thought I heard, but just around that recruitment piece, which was so perfectly and well said and timed, and we need quality, good people. So if you're starting in September, you're coming to Summer Institute in August, that's based on you're not getting paid for those days if you're a new hire. Is that kind of what I heard you say?
No, if you attend.
You get, okay.
Yeah, so Summer Institute is actually voluntary. Teachers can decide whether they attend or not. So the PD days are actually built into the existing calendar. So if you attend at Summer Institute, which is voluntary, so you could decide whether that works for you, whether there's an event where you're moving to town. I will be honest, I'd be concerned if you're a brand new teacher and you're not moving to town till September. That doesn't leave you a lot of time to get things set up, but you know, we all approach it differently. The days are actually built into the second week of spring break. So if you don't attend Summer Institute, you attend those 3 days during the school year. So that's meant to catch up those people that start after the start of the school year. And we have the luxury of actually having self-directed PD in BC, which is unique. And it's much more collaborative process here, and teachers have a bigger say in what they do for their professional development than they do in other provinces. Well, we're unique in BC with having days prior to the year starting. It's actually standard in Alberta and Saskatchewan and other provinces that you typically have days before the school year starts. So if Summer Institute didn't work for you, it's actually voluntary whether you choose to attend or not. And then you have 3 days to do your PD during that 2 weeks where everyone else is off.
Thank you.
Are you?
Just in relation to that, so just to be clear, you would do your PD either at the Summer Institute or during spring break. You aren't required to do both.
You aren't required to do both because by coming in the summer, it's voluntary. You're putting in that 15 hours. So if you choose not to do it before the school year, which is a totally valid choice, we had about 70-ish participate at Summer Institute. So if you don't do that, then you do your PD that second week of spring break. So you report to your work site from your classroom, and you're actually able to determine what your PD looks like.
Versus Trina, what you're asking for is 3 additional days put into the school calendar, like into the, during the school year. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm not the only teacher who has moved here from another district.
Right.
And I think our experience is that if I were to, let's say I didn't do Summer Institute, let's say I chose not to.
Yeah.
I'm not then getting to time to spend with my colleagues that I work with, the students that I'm serving and I'm teaching. So I could come in at this spring break to make up that time, but everyone else is gone. We're not going to be having activities organized together that we get to have shared experiences that get to then bring what we've learned and that knowledge and that experience into our classrooms together as that professional learning community. Or I could choose to do, Pro D events that are organized again in various settings throughout the year, but again, not with my colleagues that I work with and tying that to that student achievement experience.
As a follow-up to that, how do you, would that impact the parents though, having additional days off throughout the year where they would then have to find care? Like if it, say you have 3 other Fridays that you're taking off on top of the 2 weeks for spring break and the summer days off. So you're actually I just worry that it would impact parents, especially those in the low income position that would have 3 additional days throughout the year that they would have to find care for. Is there a way to balance that you can see?
Again, based on my experience with school calendars, that would always be something that, teacher groups would look at parents as well as boards and then kind of come together. I don't remember that ever being a concern or discussion. It was just something that way it was, but I mean, that would be a new discussion or something to consider.
Sure. Have you talked to parents at all about this, or is this strictly just a teacher consideration at this point?
Right now, I'm just representing the Princeton district teachers. Yeah,
Starting the
conversation.
Trustee Chenoweth and Assistant Superintendent.
Go ahead, Jane.
I have had the privilege of being a member of the Professional Development Committee who's very passionate about Summer Institute and have been really strong advocates for it for many, many years and have asked for district financial support because they feel it is really valuable and really important. Have you spoken to the Professional Development Committee about this change and how do they feel about that?
I haven't, been at a meeting to present it, but it's, I know that it's shared and it's something that I have mentioned and reached out about. I just know that for my membership, this is something that is very much consensus. And again, that's why I wanted to show that slide kind of at the beginning that we all are part of the same school district, but I think Summer Institute can be a bit different for someone who lives here as opposed to from Princeton. And that, so it's very much a consensus with our teachers in Princeton that would be something that they would.
Just help me understand, when the districts amalgamated, did Merritt already have a Summer Institute? Vince, you've been here a long time.
It's
Was there
been
one?
here as long as I've been here, so 25 plus years.
And
as
that's
well.
well before the amalgamation was in 95,
It's 30.
96.
30 years.
I came in 93 and my first experience was Summer Institute,
Right.
my first day.
And Princeton, when we amalgamated, didn't have a summer institute. So through amalgamation, they were like, hey, you're gonna do Pro D over here?
Well, it sounds like in my records almost 10 years after.
I can't remember, but I'm curious, Vince, are the merit teachers finding similar feelings?
I believe it's like this, because we did I chose not to do a survey this year. Because talking to a couple of people that are involved in the Pro D on the committee, they said our results were people will happily go to Summer Institute provided they get the 2-week spring break. But if it was one wasn't contingent on the other, they would rather have it built in.
I couldn't imagine back then, the decision was made to have a 2-week spring break to save money. I couldn't imagine. I think that it all hinged on the Pro D in the summer tied in, getting an extra week off, and maybe tied to the Olympics is what I recall.
I remember having Summer Institute and a 1-week spring break.
Right?
That's the way it was when I first started here. So,
Okay.
yeah.
If I can just step in, there was a lot of discussion too at the Okanagan schools. That they were taking their 2 weeks, and so that everybody was, because of sports teams and all of these things, that they meshed well with the interior teams, and that's basically one of the reasons we did it.
So I have a question around the cost to Princeton teachers to attend Summer Institute. Did I hear this right? That mileage isn't covered and it comes out of Pro D?
Right.
I guess a local Princeton or merit teacher wouldn't have to go into that Pro D fund because they live here.
Right. I would assume.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I heard that. Okay.
That would be the same though, Leah. My daughter, who now teaches in Eastern Canada, but when she taught in BC, if she chose to go to, she was part of the social studies group. And so if she chose to go to one of their events down in the Lower Mainland, which drew teachers from all across BC, that came out of their dollars too. So that's not unusual that comes out of your Pro D dollars. And that's something that's negotiated in the collective agreement. Whether that amount is sufficient or not is something that's negotiated at that bargaining table.
Piece I would add too is because Summer Institute is voluntary, you can choose whether you're coming to merit and you want to take that out of your PD fund, or you can choose to do your days in Princeton, because when you do them the second week of spring break, you do it at your work site. So there's no additional cost for you to go in. I know you asked Trina if she had talked to parents. I'll tell you, I have talked to some parents, and parents are a little all over the place when it comes to the 2-week spring break. So we have some parents, I'm going to say often ones that are either affluent or have children that are old enough to stay on their own. Love a 2-week spring break. You know what? Great times. For our families that are struggling, especially our single moms, it is really difficult for them to cover that 2-week span, because once your children come up to school age, you're not paying for that daycare spot. And then finding spots, especially if you don't have extended family in this area to be able to take them. So, you know, those are just concerns around the existing 2-week spring break. To add an additional 3 days on top of those families that struggle with childcare, I'm not sure that they would feel like that's in their best interest, because what you often hear in a lot of districts is they're never in school, which that's an unfair characteristic, because there's other boards that have PD days built in, but you often hear that. We actually don't hear that a lot in merit, because we only have the 2 embedded PD days in our schedules. We already have 2 of them. And because we already have the 2-week spring break and people are used to it, it's not a further impact. And we know cost of living is spiraling in both of our communities. And we have a disproportionate number of our stakeholders that fall under those lower socioeconomic brackets. The other piece I see with this is for a lot of kids, we are the place where they get breakfast and they get lunch. So for every day we're closed, that's another day they don't have access to food. And for a small percentage of our kids, we are the safe place for them. So again, when we're closed days, it's not a place for them to go.
Yeah, I just, I really appreciate the information and your thing. I would like to suggest, a lot of information has been coming out. We've got new trustees. I think this is due, the calendar is due by the government by the end of the month.
February 28th.
So I would like to suggest that we, if it's considered, that we pass the calendar this year, or sorry, for next year, but we open discussions and try to meet all our stakeholders, shareholders, parents, teachers, both sides of the district, because I know from operations that we're be closing schools down here, the heat would be on down there. I think we really have to look at this from, especially with our budget, the way we're looking at our budgets right now, so.
So trustee Rayner, would you like to put that in the form of a motion? And then we can get a seconder, because I think what you're doing is, if I'm understanding right, your motion is to move the 2025-26 district calendar. And then the second part of that motion is for the chair to form an ad hoc committee to look at the district calendar with all parties, rights holders, parents, teachers, support staff for the 26-27 calendar year, if I'm getting that right.
Exactly how I wrote it.
And it's exactly how I was gonna follow up.
Oh.
Dave. So I'll second that. And then can I just add in my comment here?
Yep.
Because essentially Chair Swan stole my thunder, but yeah, like I would be interested in hearing from stakeholders, rights holders, that sort of thing as well, because I think that this impacts more than just teachers. It impacts parents and community members as well. But like I think it's definitely worth looking at and considering. I'd also be interested, I don't know whether either of you has this information, like what percentage of our teachers actually use those 3 days during spring break to do that additional learning? Because my concern also is if we force their hands and don't give them that choice option, that could impact some people or some teachers as well. So I'd just be interested. I think basically what I'm looking for is just sort of more information, more statistics on who uses what the overall majority is looking for, because I think it's worth considering, because it's, if that's something that teachers want, it works for everybody, but I think we need to know that it works for everybody before we start making those changes. But thank you. I appreciate you bringing that to us.
So currently we have a motion on the floor for second, and a question about, so open for trustee Chenoweth.
Just curious. I am really interested also in learning about if teachers don't choose to do the summer and they choose to do it at their school. You made a comment about then the collegiality is lost. So I'd be really curious to see where we can learn more about that from all the schools, to say, is that something that's happening? Do we lose a togetherness? Like, that would be interesting to know. I'd like to know that.
Collaboration time throughout the
Sure.
year that other school districts have built in to their calendars. Professional development days are a way to do that and to
Yeah,
create that.
so part of my question for the motion is that when we create an ad hoc committee, that's something else we delve into. Because I'd be curious to know on both sides, how many teachers aren't opting to go, and is the school impacted by that? Because they don't have that collegiality. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Chair.
Anyone opposed to the motion? I am not seeing any, so the motion is passed. And I will get together with we'll get together with senior staff to make sure, and having trustees on that committee too, to work out a timeline so that well in advance of having to do this in February of 2026, which seems a long way away, but by the time we work through the pieces with all our community, it'll go quite quickly. I think we really want to conclude it prior to November, December of 25, I'm thinking, because we have to make the decision in February 26 for 26, 27. So does that make sense, Superintendent Lawrence, for the timeline?
It does, and I think that's a good way to approach it, because that way we'll have broad-based data from our community. And also, I think it'll help dive into the issue of, who's going to Summer Institute, who's doing it during the spring break. And part of that piece that John talked about, the collegiality, if you're the ones coming in during spring break, you know what, maybe we can organize something so that you can all collaborate together. So I think there's good potential in the ad hoc committee.
I also, just a comment, Trina, just because I think you started with, I want to get a conversation going, right? And so I believe we're there, and my 2.5 pages of notes, I have to process a little bit. So I really want to say thank you. Come from this way. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Trina.
Thank you, Trina.
Drive safely. See roads.
But it makes you think, why are you asking about this?
Sorry, we got on the spot, Vince.
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, put them on the spot. That's good.
Just the start talking game there, thanks.
Oh.
And you're both welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we know, having driven that road down to Princeton, you may want to drive while the weather's good.
Okay, thank you.
So our next item then is the reports that are in your package. Now I've got Angela, who's our new Director of Indigenous Services, doing her Indigenous Education Report. Do I have that right?
You do. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Angela. I know some of you know her and some of you may not. She just started with us the last week of January, and we're so happy to have her. She's been such a nice bright light. But I'm going to let her actually introduce herself. And she'll kind of give you a little bit of who she is, what she's done, and how things are going.
Hello, it's good to see all of you. My name is Angela McIver, and as it's been said, I am the new District Principal of Indigenous Education. I had to write it down because it's been so surreal, and it's a really long title. I need to remember it, but it definitely has been a really quick and whirlwind of a journey for me this last few weeks. I started officially on January the 28th, and I was fortunate I got to spend I wouldn't say a full week, 4 days with Shelley before she left. And one of the very first things that I got to do when I arrived was I got to attend the winter celebration that you saw in your package. I just want to touch on that a little bit because what an amazing event that was for so many reasons. I got to sit back and watch. I can't take any credit for it. It was the work of Shelley and all the wonderful ISAs that did an amazing job organizing that powwow with dances and singing. And I'm still kind of wearing my teacher's hat that day. So from a teacher's perspective, I thought it was an absolutely amazing event. I would have loved to have brought my classroom there. And I got so much positive feedback from principals, from teachers, and just watching students. It was an amazing event. They learned so much. It was timed perfectly. And from a teacher's perspective, managing kids was just on par. And it was an amazing event. I'd love to continue this event in the future, which amazing. I get to make these kind of decisions. So that was my second day. And then I spent the rest of the week with Shelley filling my head with an absorbent amount of information. And do I remember any of it? I don't know. I've got lots of notes and I look back at them as I'm going through my weeks. What a learning curve it's been for me, but I have to say it's been pretty exciting. I wake up every morning with this much sleep right now. Coming and excited to start my day. I was an elementary school teacher for 29.5 years and didn't think I'd leave that role. I thought that's where I'd retire. But this just kind of happened to fall on my lap. I decided to give it a try. Here I am, and didn't know I would be so excited for this change. I really thought I was going to miss all the littles. Do I miss them? Yeah, but do I miss the teachery part? No. I'm so shocked that you know, this is feeling really good. It's feeling scary and comforting all at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to touch on a few of the things that I've started in the week and a bit that I've been all by myself. I can't believe Shelley left me on the Friday. When she left, I'm like, you're leaving me by myself? But she did. I've spent a portion of my time getting out to the different schools because I don't know all the ISAs yet, getting to meet them and find it really important to check out their space, you know, where are those Indigenous students coming, because I know how important it is for our students to have that comforting, welcome space that they feel comfortable going. And so enjoying all the differences in each and every school. They're beautiful, and so proud of our district for having those spaces for our students. I've got to connect with them a little bit, not as much as I need to yet, but just to see how they're connecting with kids, both culturally, and I'm really curious to see how they're connecting with kids academically. How are they helping out with literacy and math and that kind of stuff? I know a little bit, but I'm still gonna reach out to them and find out more in that area. But found out they're doing some amazing work with different boys and girls groups where they are connecting with kids on a cultural level, teaching them so many things, being out on the land and doing things like ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts, and finding out from them that that's bringing kids to school that don't always like to come to school. So that's pretty exciting. As all of you know, we're having a really tough time keeping and retaining language teachers. So at the high school right now, there's a young man who's taken on the role of a culture teacher. It's not language class, but a culture teacher at the high school. So I've been checking in on him because really happy that he's joined us and want to see that going as much as we can. And also found out through that process that one of our ISAs actually knows a little bit of Ntlaka'waching. She is going to do just a little piece of language in that block so that we can still incorporate language into that block. I got to go out and meet Maddie Michelle, who is the new me. She took my position out at Nicola Camford, team teaching with Yvonne Joe, and she is wonderful. She's a wonderful young lady. She's Silk from the Upper Nicola area, but she's going to be out at Nicola Camford for the remaining part of the year to keep that language program going, which is near and dear to my heart. So I'm checking on that as much as I can. Some really new things for me, like preparing for a mock audit with the ISAs to learn about that whole process that they need to do for inputting data. So all those kinds of things are all really new for me, but I'm excited to learn about all these new things that I have to do.
It's been a really seamless transition for Angela, and she's such a good fit with our senior ed team, and the fact that she's local, you know, and has been, you know, in our district, I think really will help us move this forward. Shelley has built such a lovely foundation, you know, and really brought us from a place where, you know, we weren't united, we weren't cohesive, we weren't collaborative. And now Angela is here and can help us move forward as we move into academics, incorporating the language and culture. We're incredibly glad that she decided to put her hat in the ring. And it's just been wonderful having her here at the office.
And I do have to say, part of me that's made this a little bit easier is having such a wonderful group of people in this building. I know Nicola Camford was my home. It still feels like home, but being in this space also just feels comforting, and when I need help, everybody's so willing to answer my 1,000,001 questions. And so that's really comforting and has made this transition really good for me.
And when just having sat on the interview panel, when we say she's from the community, or when Angela says Nicola Canford was her school, that was also her, if you don't know, that was her elementary school. So that journey through there, through our system, through all those warts of those years, still staying with us and making our district better is, it was just an incredible interview, and so happy that you took that step from, I'm sure Bert's still crying, but you know, but it's going to benefit the whole district. So welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Chair Swan, I'm just wondering if in the public, maybe we should say something about Shelley or.
You know what, I would say, Shelley has created such a wonderful legacy for our district. You know, she's such a calm, lovely, kind person, and she's so connected to everyone in the different communities. You know, we're very sad that she decided to go, but I think it's going to be a great new chapter for her, because her husband's retiring at the same time. Shelley is one of the kindest people I've ever met in my life, and such a general spirit and kind soul. And I think, you know, Shelley's also very private. She doesn't like public events, but one of the amazing things our ISAs did for her was a blanketing ceremony, which she did not know about, and we kept it that way because she probably would have not come to it. But it turned out to be such a great cathartic moment. We were able to share her impact. And I think Shelley's legacy will continue for a very long time. And I told her she's not getting away that easy. We'll find a way to rope her back in some way. So.
Thank you, Courtney.
Sure, I'd like to just say for Shelley, I think it was beautiful, the way that the ISAs honored her at the Civic Center at the end of that powwow. And wish her well. She's not going away. She's not leaving the valley. I'm sure we'll see her at many, many events. And probably on road trips. Her and Amigo. But Angela, I want to say how proud I am of you.
Aww.
Okay, you're an amazing educator, and you're going to be an amazing role model in this position. And don't ever doubt yourself, because you're an amazing woman. Okay? Wish you all the best.
I would just like to say that I've known Angela for a long time, and I had the pleasure of sitting and talking to her about the possibilities of this role, and I did my very best to scare her. And Angela showed courage, determination, spark, bravery, and excitement in the face of really recognizing the challenges that take place when you step into leadership. And I too just kept thinking about the little girl that you've talked about, and just thinking, I don't know much more of an inspirational story than yours. And I just commend you for stepping up to a challenge. It's really wonderful. Wonderful. And we're so grateful that you're here.
Yes. Great stuff.
Welcome.
Welcome is right.
Now let's get to work.
No. Drive safe, man.
Thank you, everybody.
Drive safe.
We're incredibly lucky to have Angela, and it's really hard when you leave your school mid-year. Like that was one of the pieces that was hard for her, because when you make the decision to move into admin or a new position, it's typically at a natural transition or break. And this wasn't. You know, the lovely thing that's happened from this, Angela stepping into this role has created a new position for a brand new teacher who's entering, who has the language skills. So, you know, and also local. So, you know, it's just a lovely cycle. And And the fact that she has her own history, you know, as a student, as a teacher, and now she'll have it as an administrator. I really value her voice on our team, and I just feel incredibly lucky that she decided to put her name forward, because it's really hard emotionally when you leave your school and people are depending on you. And she is one of those linchpin teachers, you know, she's a mentor in that building. But I think what she brought to Nicola Canford, she'll be able to bring to her district as a whole. And what I talked to her about this role was, you know what, she's had a great impact on Nicola Canford. Now she can have a great impact on our entire district. And this is something I think we actually shine and do a really good job of as SD58. Authentic reconciliation, authentic cultural integration. So not only can she make this impact here, there's potential to also make it at the provincial level. And Shelley had already started some of that work. So we're just really grateful that she's come to be part of our team.
A win for Nicholas, so welcome.
And you know, that other piece that speaks to is that ability to grow our own talent and have them shine, and recognizing that too. I think that's, as we talk about recruitment and retention, part of recruitment is how are we reaching those current students who would consider education as a career path. And so it's great to see that full circle.
It really is. And I think that's actually our strongest retention strategy, getting people who are from here to stay here or to come back, because you have that support system that you need. And we have a lot of really good things that go on in Nicholas Milkamine. So it's just really nice to see people come back and do those pieces.
Courtney, I'll have you take us through the early learning, the inclusive reports, and then the ever popular superintendent's report.
Okay. So Daniela is a tireless advocate for our district, and some of the great work she does is literacy in our district. She works with Literacy Merit and Nicola Valley Society, and they hosted a literacy week, and the grand finale was a Bob's and Lolo concert that was free. There was free CDs. It was a great community event. There's a lot of time and work and planning that goes into it, but just the passion that Daniela describes the things that she does. And this is just one small piece of the work that she does as our district. And it's not in her report, but one of the things I wanted to touch on that she's talked about previously, and I have as well, she's organized writing workshops. And sometimes when we offer PD as a district, you know, it's often a one-off. They come to the session, but they don't really take it back and make it come alive. And the story workshop that she's brought in, it's a series of 3, has really made a fundamental difference in the teachers that came. So Mickey Lee Ransom is a teacher at JA. Probably one of our most dynamic and master teachers that we have. Had the pleasure of being in her class on Monday again, and she was doing another element of this writing workshop. And I just saw great collaboration. She had another class come in, you know, they were reading a book that had no words. So how do you read a book that has no words? And then we have what are called provocations or tools. They're just random items that are meant to spark imagination for the kids. And they had 2 different centers set up in the different rooms the kids could pick. And she's really walking them through the whole writing process, the brainstorming, the sentences, you know, how do we add flair in there? She's just a dynamic teacher, and the kids were super engaged. So like, just a credit to Daniela for organizing that, but really like people like Mickey Lee that taking it and making it a reality. Best part of my day on Monday was being in there with the grade 2 kids. It's never a bad day when I'm with kids, but it was a great lesson. And she didn't know I was coming. I actually had other meetings get canceled. So I'm like, well, I'm going to Princeton because I want to go see people. So it was just wonderful to walk in. That lesson wasn't planned for me because I was going to be there. It was just literally what she was going to do that day. So some really great work going on at JA. You know, our other schools as well, but I just happened to be at JA on Monday. So something really to highlight the work that's going on, and just really impressed with that. In terms of inclusive ed, Misty did a different kind of report for you this month, which I actually thought was lovely. She talked about, what are successes we've had for kids that have, severe needs, challenges, and how do we work in partnership with different organizations and agencies. And I thought she did a lovely job of putting this together, because often the stories that you hear in the media or people talk about are the things that school districts haven't done, or things that are not going well. And I think she did a great job of highlighting, you know what, we have to look for success, and success for kids looks differently for everyone. But there's like great things going on. So when you read the report,
This was awesome.
yeah, like, it was amazing. And I didn't know she was going to put this particular report together. And it actually was just heartwarming when you read it. And reading this is really Misty in person on paper. She is a connector, she's a collaborator, tireless advocate for the kids, and just one of the loveliest human beings I've met. And because she is the way she is, she's able to get buy-in from different agencies and supports from our different school. And she's incredibly supportive of our SSTs in her role. Honestly, I can't rave enough about the good work that she does, and really highlighting the good work that's going on in our schools and what they're doing each day. So just a really lovely report that she put together.
I just wanted to sort of showcase and maybe think about moving forward for us. She's written the report in the font that we've now moved over to Denmark, BC for accessibility needs. And so when we look at our website moving forward, we've got an RFP out. There's a big part of what she did in this report. If you notice, she gave you a preemptive paragraph. So she's just leading by example, not just in the wonderful ways you shared, but just how she presented information here today. So kudos if you can pass from the board.
You know what, Misty does a phenomenal job, so positive in her interactions with people, and she never gives up. So if one way didn't work, what are we going to try next? And you know what, to have someone who's resilient and perseverance, because you know what, sometimes these are really hard cases that we're working with. We just have to find the right thing that's going to work with that kid. And I say we have many more successes than we have things that are a challenge in our district. And I'm really impressed with the collective work of our SSTs as well. Part of what we do in our district is collaborative support meetings where we go out as district staff, kids that are having challenges, we brainstorm different ideas and supports. But a lot of times it's really a celebration of the good things that have been put in place at that school, and the success that those kids are having. So just some really positive things going on, and I'll be sure to share your feedback with Misty.
That accessibility piece is money.
And my favorite part, sharing my superintendent's report. And you will notice it's getting longer and longer every month. So we may have created a little bit of a monster with this. But to be honest, this brings Simone and I such joy as we're putting this together, because this is our good news stories of our district. And because I'm not going to steal your thunder from your PAC meetings, I'm going to stick to one event from each school. But Princeton Secondary made the cover this month because they were grade 11 and 12 students were working with senior citizens and teaching them to use their phones. Cutest pictures ever. And like such a lovely way of connecting with different age groups. And I have to say, we have lovely, lovely kids at our high school. Teenagers often, get a bad rap. But when you walk into our buildings, they are friendly, they are welcoming. There's just a lot of really good things going on. PSS always has a ton of activities for their kids. And a lot of credit goes to Bill, especially as principal, for modeling, but also for our teachers stepping forward and making sure that the kids have those opportunities to do different pieces. Merit Central, they're always my overachievers. They're up to 4 pages now. I know. But you know what? I think this is such a wonderful way of sharing what we're doing. So we publish it on our website, but we haven't been sending it directly to our principals, which is something we're going to start doing now, because they've really stepped up their game of putting these together. One of the great events at Merritt Central this month was Rockcombe Community Society Services did a harm reduction and wellness day. They didn't just do it at Central, but it was a great day with physical activities, you know, building perseverance and resiliency skills, and just a great partnership of come in, let's work together as partners. They have a ton of stuff going on at Merritt Central, so I won't read it all to you. They also did go on their annual ski trip, which they were very excited about. But I think it really highlights the wonderful things that are happening in our schools. Collettville, the one I'm going to highlight, grade 7s went to Quebec City. If you've ever been part of a school trip, there's an incredible amount of planning and stress that goes with that because you are responsible for children that are not biologically related to you 24/7. I'm speaking from experience of taking kids on these trips. But our new principal, Brandon, went as part of the group, which I think just really models, you know, leadership. Also gave him a really great chance to bond with his kids. They had so much fun, and this will be a lifelong experience that they will be able to speak to. Vermilion Forks, they had different snowshoeing and cross-country skiing and downhill skiing going on. But one of the things that was lovely is they actually came to our winter celebration here in Merritt. Angela touched on it, but it was an amazing day. Lots of positive feedback from the kids, positive feedback from teachers. It was a great way of doing it, and they did a great job of the MC actually explaining the dances, what the symbolism behind them was. And what I really liked about it is tapping local people on the shoulder, including our own students, to perform at those days. It was a fabulous event. I was able to pop in with 3 different groups. Just a lot of wonderful things going on there. Diamondville, you know what, they always have their grandfather teachings, but the thing that I wanted to highlight is they hosted Jack Thomas talks about mental illness, amputee awareness, and resilience in the face of adversity. And we've recognized that this is an area where our kids need some growth, you know, perseverance and resiliency. You know, not just from COVID, but also from the fires and floods that we've gone with. It's rebuilding some of these skills in our kids as they move forward. And if we just build it within their lives, they will also have it when it comes to academics and other pieces in their life. But there's a lot of really wonderful things going on at Diamondville. Becky works very hard to make sure that school is welcoming, does a really good job of collaborating with her staff and her parents. So just wanted to give them a little shout out of what's going on there. Skides has really, I don't want to skip Nicola Canford. So we were teasing Bert a little bit because he had actually captions in here. He normally only sends us pictures. But one of the things that they've been working on is working with Elisa Nelson-Smith around playing Hungry Hippos in the snow. I have to say, Nicola Canford, one of their strengths is their physical literacy and academics and being on the land, you know, probably do the best job of our schools of integrating that into everything that they do. And when you walk into Nicola Canford, it's an incredibly welcoming building. You know, it starts with Bert, but honestly, every staff member that you run into is lovely and welcoming. And you know what? There's a deep love for their kids at that school. So just a shout out to Bert there.
I would just like to comment that in Nicola Canford, we need to acknowledge that baby Riley rolled over. The Roots of Empathy baby rolled over. That is a significant achievement from one of our tiniest teachers.
You know what, we actually love the Roots of Empathy program. It's such a nice piece to, you know, really create that bond. And it goes on at a few of our schools. For Skides this month, they chose to focus on our blended learning environment. So we have our hockey academy at the rink in Kelowna, and then we have Lions Peak, which is, I want to say Putlum, but that might be wrong. I might be Richmond. But it shows the blended learning environment. So they do a mix of in class and they do a mix of online, but just really highlighting and kind of putting a picture to what our kids look like. Because in our distance learning environment, we don't always get to see the faces. And I have to give them a lot of credit. The last couple of months, they've been doing a great job of highlighting their kids. And not just numbers on a page, but this is what our kids are about. CLC, there's a lot of wonderful things going on at CLC. This On Thursdays, they do what they call lunch and learn. And Jane, Misty, and I were actually able to attend last Thursday. It's the best attended day at CLC, and it's a partnership with Schwabcom. And they bring in different guest speakers each week. There's a lunch there for the kids. But the kids were very engaged. This particular presentation was from the RCMP around digital safety and online, and just different things that kids need to know, about explicit pictures, about the prevalence we're seeing in the increase of child pornography, especially after COVID. They asked really thoughtful, engaged questions. And the RCMP did a really good job of giving them preventative tips of, how do you make sure that you don't get into this situation? And if unfortunately you do, what options are open to you to support you to come through that, which is a really important piece. Because when you're a teenager and those things happen to you, if you don't feel like you can reach out to someone, it's not a good situation. But just a real shout out to lots of hands-on learning there, lots of activities, and it was honestly a great day spent with kids there. Merit Bench, the one I'm going to highlight is their school council. So we have two teachers that are working with them, Mrs. Ottens and Mrs. Vanderbrink, and they're looking at a school-wide multicultural day. I always think it's great when we have student voice leading activities in our school. And you know what, just wonderful things going on there. And John Allison, they went skating with the Princeton posse. I have to say, the posse is in the school a lot. Like, they do a lot of volunteer activity, especially with their kids at JA. And the kids love when they're there. JA, just because it's a K-3 school, just has a different feeling when you walk in that building. Because they're just joyful from K-3. Or they're really not joyful. There's no in between. But you know what? It's a great environment there. They're always so happy to tell you about everything in their life, whether they've met you before or not. I had one come right up to me and give me his whole life story as we stood in the hallway together as they came in for recess. It made my day. It was super adorable. But just a lot of really wonderful things going on there. And then Merit Secondary, I actually had the pleasure of going over to the Law 12 presentations. They had it running all day as a display in the library. And Dave Finch, who's the teacher of it, these are basically, they're given real cases based on crimes. And then they recreated forensic evidence, legal reports. They had to do a presentation. And you'll see the house in this picture. This is actually a model of the crime scene. So I was able to go over and see 3 of them present. They were very engaged. I told them, I said, when I did Law 12, we sat and we answered questions out of the book. I'm like, this is so engaging. And the kids did such a great job with it. And even like they made like text messages to show like the conversations between them. It was amazing. So if they do it again next year, if you're able to, I'd suggest going. Just really great things going on there. I really appreciate the invite because I like to see the kids in action doing those pieces. So I will leave this for your reading pleasure. We're up to 22 pages, but I actually think that's a wonderful piece because these are all the great things. And to tell you the truth, even though this is growing, this isn't even a 10th of what our schools do. So this just puts you in a good mind frame. And when you have those tougher days, I think this just really just tells you like what are the important pieces.
Excellent report, Superintendent Lawrence. Maybe can we bring some of these to our branch meeting at the end of February and put them out?
The board chair is looking forward to having one emailed to him, so.
Okay. I will email it right now.
But it looked fantastic. And it's so nice to see those great things that are happening in the schools because often we're dealing with other issues. So it's great to see that and be highlighting those pieces. And I almost think there's a piece, Trustee Ward, through our PLC about one year we actually had a extra room set up where districts had sent down with their trustees, and we put up boards and that would showcase good things happening across the province, which was really neat for breaks and that. So it might be something to think about again as an organization to be doing that as well during AGM.
Okay. That's by April. Give me a minute.
Well, it doesn't have to be this April.
Thank you. I'm like, oh, 60 districts, 600 trustees, let me get through it. Oh. Thank you, Chair.
And the next is the Riverside Learning Center update.
Okay, so unfortunately, our project has been delayed by a lighting package. Of all the things we would have predicted to hold up the project, it's the lighting package. Daniela and I both asked, well, can't we just go buy new lights somewhere else? Apparently that is not the answer because it's bigger than just the lights. It's an entire electrical system. My dad is probably cringing since he's a construction worker, but we were trying to problem solve. Our consultants have been working with the specific supplier. We've had a small percentage of the lighting package arrive. It looks like most of it is scheduled to arrive sometime in March. So this is going to put our initial timeline of opening behind. So right now, it will either be May or June. We communicated this with our contractors, with Mandy of Little Seeds. Part of the issue is it takes 30 days to get licensing, and it's difficult to make the transition mid-month just because Mandy would have to refund, the Y would have to charge. It's just not as feasible. So it's disappointing. Doug, our project manager, is working hard to ensure that it stays to this timeline. He continues to push on an almost daily basis. So it will either be May or June, and we're hoping to have a firm answer sooner rather than later. But things do not always arrive when they tell us it's going to.
Just while we're on this topic, I'm just curious if there's going to be a chance for the board to meet with the YMCA management group or something. I don't know if there's any way we can set that up, Chair Swan, but I think it would be beneficial.
You're doing interviews this week.
I think we can, like, if Gordon's okay with it, I think we could set it up
I
a meeting.
like that. A lot of ambiguity in Princeton right now, and it's a $10.5 million project, and we've got people saying they're not going to show up. So I think we got to try and. I know there's growing pains, but I think we have to look at some flexibility for the small district and the amount of effort that's gone into this, that we have to really resolve it with YMCA.
Thanks, Trustee Rayner. And just contacting the ministry and talking about that potential request for additional funds.
Yes, so right now, Doug and Unitech have gone over the budget. It looks like we will have sufficient funds even if we don't open till June. But what the ministry has recommended that we put our application in, because there's a delay from when you put it in to when they process it, so that if we do need it, we already have the ball rolling. Harold has already started on that process.
Good.
Moving on.
And we're getting that Y meeting set up. I take it so that we can have that that discussion, because they will be managing we're the bricks and mortar and they're the operations end of daycare down there. So it'll be good to get together and knit some of those pieces together. Next is the 24-25. I think that's the 25-26 amended budget bylaw process. It says 24-25 on the document, but I'm thinking it's.
No, it's 20.
It is 24-25? It's the current year. Okay.
So maybe I'll just kick it off. Thank you, Chair. For those keeping score at home, it's on page 27 of the board packet. For not watching the hockey game, they're keeping score. There's a lot of great things about the education sector. One of the best things about it is we get to do the budget process twice. We get to do it in the spring, we get to do it in the summer. And the chair is right, that is for the existing 24-25 school year. And normally, boards must pass that amended budget by February 28th. Given that government had their election and were putting their information from a financial perspective together, and they were a little bit late. Normally, we'll get the updated budget figures from the ministry for the recalculated budget in mid-December, usually before winter break. This year, it was delayed until January 27th, so it kind of put everything back about a month and a half from what we are normally. And as a result, they pushed the deadline back to March 28th for the boards to pass their amended budget. So suggesting that we take advantage of that. There's a couple reasons why. With that delay, we could use the February count, the actual count for enrollment in February. So that will provide us a more realistic revenue projection. It also allow us to have another month's worth of actual expenditures to create that amended budget. So it is a win-win there to be able to delay it a little bit. So basically, we're proposing to bring the amended budget back. I know Laura's been working very hard on crunching the numbers, and we'll have that for the board's consideration at their March 12th board meeting. So in order to be able to meet that March 28th deadline. So proposing to bring back the amended budget based on the actual enrollment for September and February and what our forecast expenditures to the end of the year. So maybe on that note, I'll turn it back to the chair if there's any questions from the board that we can try and answer for you.
I guess it's not a caution, but just a reminder to everyone, as we pass that 24-25 budget, and that delay in it, just as when we passed the February one, it's very tight to make any changes if you're trying to accrue some savings. And so it'll be even so it's good that we're getting the time, but just a reminder that it's close to impossible in the last 3 months of the school year to do something, which is why that surplus is so important to us and having accurate figures. So thank you for getting this piece done, both Harold and Laura, and I know the finance team that backs you guys up. So now I'm on the right page on my document, which is the 25-26 preliminary budget process.
Yeah. Back-to-back fun. So yeah, just a couple pieces there. Lots of good information on the memo that we provided trustees. With Courtney new in her position, kind of the first budget cycle, me coming in to try and help the process and relying on Laura's expertise and experience in here. This process will probably look and feel a little bit different than it has in the past years. Just as we go through the consultation process. Layer on top of that some of the financial challenges that the province is looking at, as well as the district. We want to make sure we do this as best we can and have a lot of input into the process. So when we bring a recommended plan to the board for their consideration, it's been well vetted. It's been had a lot of hands and touches on it from our rights holders and our partner groups and our staff. So we just wanted to kind of make sure that that process starts now, and we kind of outlined what people can expect between now and when we ask the board to consider and vote on that bylaw in the month of May. So in the memo that we provide, we talk about principles and making sure that the decisions that we bring forward and that the board eventually makes is grounded in the strat plan. A very important document as we continue to provide services to our students and enhance their student success. We want to make sure, as we talked about before, having input from our rights holders to our partners to the administration team and our staff, and make sure it's well thought out and that the information we bring forward and the recommendations have been vetted through those groups, and making sure that as we look through and look at our enrollment forecast, either being kind of flatlined or continue to or start to dip, that we always have that 3-year rolling plan in mind. So those decisions that the board makes this year are informed by the out years as well. So 26-27 and 27-28, and not making decisions in a vacuum. Some of the assertions or assumptions that we'll put together the recommendations that the provincial funding formula that was over or under review just before the pandemic will continue on a kind of a per FTE basis, that won't change. We'll talk about consistent or slightly lower than a normal 24, 25 domestic enrollment numbers. We may see some downward pressure on there. And our assumption will continue to be that all negotiated and approved salary increases will be funded by the government. And that's been the process the last few years. If the actual money comes in, actually what we need, we'll crunch those numbers, but those are kind of the assumptions as we go into the process. And at a very high level, again, we'll go through in March and flush these steps out in the process with some timelines. But really, it's looking at the existing revenue and what our enrollment will do. We'll take a look at the pressures that we're facing, not only from this fiscal year, but as we look forward to those out years around, as teachers work through the grid and those increments are required. As there are additional pressures on replacement salaries or benefits, we'll take all of that into consideration and identify what the pressures are, and then bring that total to the board for their consideration, and bring it with some mitigation strategies. So what and how can we address these pressures moving forward to make sure that we still contain and have an accumulated surplus that's within the board's policy that allows us to have strong financial management moving forward and continue to provide the services that we need to our students and support for our staff and the entire system. So at a very high level, that's what the process will look like. We'll make sure that through those key points about the pressures and especially around mitigation strategies, we'll bring that through our partners and our rights holders and the admin team, just to make sure, again, if they have ideas and suggestions and feedback into those, we want to hear them. Sitting in this office and new to these roles, we will not be able to identify all of the appropriate strategies. So we're going to rely heavily on those groups to help support us to be able to bring the best plan forward to the boards for their consideration. So timing at a very high level, we put that together at the bottom of page 29 in the memo, looking at potentially asking the board to consider having a special board meeting in the month of May to be able to split out those readings between the 14th and possibly another date in May, just to be able to have, present the information in April, have some dialogue, some deep dialogue and some consideration in order to make sure we don't push up too close to that June 30th deadline of having the preliminary budget passed. So that's kind of initial thoughts. Again, in March, we'll bring a deeper plan with more deadlines for the board to consider and to approve as we move forward. But at a high level, as we kick off this process, we thought it was important to have this conversation and present it to the board at this level, in case there's any different direction that the board wanted us to take, that we would certainly welcome that and then start to bring that forward and again into the March board meeting. So maybe on that note, Chair, I'll turn it back to you to lead us through any questions or discussion the board may want to have.
Questions for Mr. Cole. I think the other piece is that April piece with the to be determined meeting dates, getting those fleshed out, and whether it's just in the communities or when we talk about our rights holders, we may want to talk about going out into community too. That's just nothing firm on that, but I think that might be something to talk about as well. Questions for the Secretary Treasurer?
Just a word of, not caution, but when we go to public consultation, just have a level of language that common people can really understand, and the visuals. And I just want to say thank you to Harold for the presentation and just your use of language. I just thought it was easy to understand. Yeah, I just think important, the language we use moving forward. Trustee Rayner.
Yeah, and I'd just like to thank Current Secretary Treasurer Harold Cole for stepping up. We really appreciate it.
And Laura.
Well, of course, Laura, she already knows.
Such a
She's the glue that
backbone.
keeps it together for sure.
Yeah, extra pressure. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions. Thank you for that, Harold. And as we move forward, making those decisions to put us on a sound financial future, looking at those 3 years out, will be putting us in a good place at the end of the tunnel. Next, I think I have, is it just a second here, policy recommendations. For review.
So we did have policies for first reading at our last board meeting, but they got sent out late for consultation. So we wanted to give another month for our rights holders and stakeholders to provide feedback. So I'll bring those back next month. So we don't have anything for first reading, nothing for second reading this time. And then board authority courses is coming for third reading. There's been no further edits or feedback. We made some small edits. So we could have a motion to pass this policy tonight. And then when we met as the policy committee the last time, there's a number of policies for repeal. So Anne took us through these and why she had her recommendations for appeal. I'll just quickly go through the reasons just to remind you. So for policy 300, hiring of excluded personnel, it's going to be replaced by admin procedure. And what it says is not actually what we do as our practice. So it's actually worse to have a policy that we don't follow than to not have a policy. So we're better off to repeal that one. Criminal record checks is actually covered off in our hiring package and our volunteer procedure, but we will do an admin procedure around that one. Bus driver training, abstracts, and physical exam. We actually have a handbook that covers all of this for our employees, so it's a little bit of duplication. Use of alcohol and illegal drugs. So there's actually an impairing substances toolkit that we use. This one will become an admin procedure as well, but there's other legislation and tools that we use to support this. Interpretation of administrative officers. We don't really refer to them as administrative officers. We normally say principal or vice principal. There is some language around administrative officers in the collective agreement, but it's often referring to the principal, and that'll be one of the things that will work towards housekeeping in our next round of negotiations. Teacher exchange, it's rarely used. We've had no requests come forward this year, and we're going to replace it with an admin procedure. Teacher trainees, it's actually section 87 of the School Act, so we don't actually need an admin procedure or a policy for that one. Our dress code says almost absolutely nothing, so it makes sense to repeal it. Electronic use device, it's actually talking about distracted driving legislation. So this is like texting and driving. So that's covered by criminal code. Communicable diseases, we actually take guidance from Interior Health, and we'll be making some admin procedures around that. And then the non-sexist environment is actually covered off by Article E1 in our collective agreement. So there's a lot of repetition. A lot of what's actually in these policies doesn't align with current regulation and other legislation. So we're better off to repeal it. So those would be my recommendations. So motion to approve 340 and then a motion to repeal all of the policies listed there.
So we'll start with the motion to approve 3.40 board authority courses.
Trustee Ward, put the motion forward to accept the third reading, 3.40 Board Authority courses, seconded by Chenoweth.
Any further discussion on that one? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Carried. And unless someone says otherwise, to sever something, items A through K to be approved for repeal. A mover, Kent Laidlaw, on trustee Hoisington. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? Carried. That should bring us to student trustee reports.
So Jacob says his regrets, he's not well tonight, because we are seeing with many students in our district right now. I asked Hayden if she would consider the same question that PSS trustees, student trustees considered last board meeting around us having more discussions around the McCreary report and what Hayden feels are significant areas of concern for kids at MSS. So thank you, Hayden.
Thank you, guys.
So the actual question we got asked was, what are the biggest health and wellness challenges facing students in our school district from my perspective? The first one that me and Jacob had come up with was sleep. Now, I'm not sure if that's something that can be like prevented. I mean, you can't tell somebody to have a better sleep schedule, but I feel like it's something that teachers need to take into consideration more so when they are, because a lot of teachers are super hard on their students, but I think that sometimes they forget that students have lives outside of school, and it's not just like some students have work or they have late practices at nighttime that run super late, and then they have to go home and do their homework on top of that. So when they come to school and they're a little extra tired than normal or acting a little differently, teachers normally don't take that into consideration, which I think is huge because a lot of students have that. I feel like there's not a lot of students that just kind of school, home, and school again. And a lot of teachers, like, I think we just sometimes forget that, and it's something that is very important. Another one that Jacob actually had come up with was, he said that something that sticks out to him the most is a substance abuse in the schools right now. He had said that the school district right now, especially in MSS, is substance abuse is like huge. We see it in all grades, even grade 8s, which is super unfortunate because they're so young and they're so fresh to high school. But when you get into high school, I feel like it's something that you just get introduced to, which is not good, but it's like valid. When you get into grade 8, you're introduced to all these like older kids and new people and new friend groups and all of this, which is something that I feel like kids need support in. Because Jacob said that he feels like, especially the younger kids, have a hard time reaching out to adults because they get seen as like the bad kids or the poor students or whatever. So I feel like that's something also that could be looked at. And also not only drugs, but drinking is a huge problem in the school district right now from grades 8 to 12. Which not that like the older grades is any better, but seeing young kids go through things that they've done, they don't have anywhere to go or don't know who to reach out to, I think is very sad and unfortunate. That's all I got.
Thank you for that. That certainly highlights those pieces for us and gives us that ground floor look at what's actually happening, and certainly validates parts of that report from the Mercury study and gives us a place to move forward from. So I appreciate that and the frankness, because that helps ground us.
Thank you.
Chair Swan, I have a question for Assistant Superintendent Kempston. Thank you, Hayden. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So drop the mic and truthful, and you didn't have to say a lot, but you said a lot. Thank you. Jane, what do we do when you hear substance use and drinking young ages? I would imagine that there are things that could be triggered now to move forward at MSS and to support Hayden in that sort of vulnerable truth telling and to see some action moving into the next.
Well, I think what was really powerful for me with what Hayden said is she talked about where kids are at. And she said it without judgment, but what she said is that kids need safe places to be. And so it's not around. I think Hayden challenges us, and Jacob challenges us to think about kids are doing the best they can. What do we do to give kids alternatives when they find themselves in a hard and dangerous place? And what Hayden's really talking about is the compassionate systems work that our province has been involved in. You didn't know that, but what you're talking about is how do schools meet kids exactly where they are without judgment, without shame. But is it safe at our schools for a 13-year-old to come forward and say, I'm really struggling with this, or I made a mistake, or I don't know how to deal with this pressure I feel. And that's the most, to me, that's incredibly powerful and important. So the call is to go back to our high schools and say kids need safe adults, safe places, no shame, no blame, no judgment, and really good education and strategies. And schools are doing that. You know, when I think about the school-based team meetings we have, when I think about the kind of conversations we have around discipline. Hayden's words just reinforce the hard and challenging work that schools are trying to do. So I really applaud, that. I think trustee Ward is exactly right. What you didn't say was long, but what we said was powerful. It was great because I think you really called on adults to be and do different for kids.
I really appreciate it. I know trustee Rayner has a question,
Well-
and I think, sorry, I just want to kind of. The part around a young person, it's almost like grade 11s and 12s have that confidence and maybe those tools to ask and reach out for help. Maybe the hard part, or maybe what I heard you really say, was grade 8s and 9s who haven't built a mentor, confidence or trust or faith in who they even are, how to express what they're feeling. And is our way of compassionate systems, is the bridge of language, the bridge of reaching out. How do we know we're doing it? Who are we missing? Who's not being heard? So I really thank you.
On top of all that, it's hearing that and obviously Jane, you're aware, and so our counselors are, this is the information that obviously should be in their hands because they should be reaching out. You know, maybe they like, we don't know which child, but maybe they have an intuition who maybe and approach them first rather than.
It's a multi-prong approach. So we have supports at the school level, but we also reach out for community supports.
Right.
I think part of the struggle that we're seeing is our kids that have come out of the pandemic, you know, physically they're aging, but developmentally, you know, they have a lot of things going on in their life, which they may not be fully prepared for. Is some of the gaps that we've seen out of the trauma that we've had. So COVID was one thing, the floods and the fires were another. But also, how do we cope? What's the resiliency? And part of when you come to high school is trying to figure out who you are, and making sure that people are confident in themselves or they're not being easily led. I think that's a huge piece. People are desperate to be accepted and they're desperate to have friends and they don't want to be on the outside looking in. So for some of them, they think this is the way in for them, but it actually just ends up creating way more problems than they had. I think some of the work that Jane is doing with the McCleary group, yeah, I think there's a nice piece in there. Province-wide, you know, we're concerned about substance use, and not even just illegal substances. Vaping is an epidemic, you know, which the studies are already telling us does more damage than cigarettes. So, you know, there's a lot of pressure on these kids as they're coming up. You know, how do we help them be more confident in themselves so they're okay to say no? We all lived through it when we were teenagers, but I actually think it's worse nowadays because it's not just the people that are with you physically, it's all the things that you see on social media, and the pressure to belong and to fit and all of these other things.
This brings me back to a PAC meeting at PSS that we had, and it was around St. John Ambulance was doing a train the trainer, but it was youth with youth. And it was a real, like way before the sober movement happened with a bunch of adults, but it was really, really crystal clear that there is an identifiable group and team of youth that if you ever wanted to reach out, and they were peer to peer. And I just wondered if, you know, moving forward, it's almost because I know MSS has a really cool mentor program. Great, they go to grade 7s and then they have a buddy like in grade 8. So I'm curious to hear how this unfolds. And
So I think one of the things is when I was a primary teacher and reading was very much assigned to the most often female primary teacher, there was a movement that happened where every teacher is a reading teacher. I think what is happening now, what kids are saying is kids, and this refers to your question too, kids, we have wonderful counselors, but that may not be the person that a kid attaches to. And there's lots of work being done in all of our high schools around everyone is a mental health support. We're not mental health experts, but if Hayden, you're a grade 8, if you're a little boy in grade 8 and you're really struggling with something, your math teacher may be your person. And just be told to go see Mr. Ellis. Mr. Ellis is wonderful, that might not be your person. And what kids are saying very clearly, two things. I want to be able to choose my person. And my person needs to know who to go to and to be a mental health support. But also in the McCreary report, it talked about how kids talk to other kids, but they choose who they talk to. Mentorship is great, but that might not be who that little grade 8 boy chooses. So there's value in having resilience and mentor for every kid, because nobody knows the impact they have on someone else, right? So our high schools are doing that work and kids are demanding it. Kids are saying,
I seem to have lost sound.
person I'm gonna go to. So Everett knows he can go to Mr. Ellis. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I'd say that's what we're.
Just for the record, I
Wait.
mentored Adrienne when she was in grade 8.
Oh, this is a full circle here.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Don't even want to say.
But Hayden, thank you again, like
Yeah.
really powerful. Thank you.
Really good.
That's good.
And I lost sound for a little bit, but I think the other one is it's not necessarily just teachers who our students are reaching out to. I know within our CUPE staff, bus drivers, custodians, sometimes it's not that teacher, it's that other person in the building, and making sure that they're equipped as well to reach out and to not judge and to help students forward. And the other one we're hearing from some students are our washrooms at certain times of day aren't a safe place for some kids. Is for a group that might be, for lack of a better word, having a party in that boys' washroom in the metalwork ring, but not necessarily for other kids who actually need to use it as a washroom. So I think there's those pieces of nuances that we need to be aware of too, and how that works. So thank you again, Hayden. And this is going to bring us to our PAC reports. So we will start with Dave.
School, so, yeah, JA, there last night, they don't want the, two, or the, Pro D thing changed, but that's gonna be up for discussion, I think. They did skate with the posse, they spent a lot of time with them, they're really good little mentors, those posse kids, and with the skating, every kid gets to skate, because they sometimes don't have the years to help, so it's really cool. They've actually gone to the town for a grant for 10,000 to get trees for our property down there. So it'd be interesting to see if the town approves that for the PAC. That would be wonderful. Go town. Right now, a lot of sick days. They're having a really tough time down there. They go out, they can only go out at -15 is a principal thought that's about the lowest that she'd let them out. These other days, they're inside, they're wound up. And at noon, they are ready to get out. So she keeps it brief, but gets them out there. And they had a discussion on the parking lot. Generally around the safety concern, parents are trying to rush in and pick up the kids before the buses are loaded. So they're letters out and all that, so, but a great little school. There you go.
We'll go to Trustee Ward next.
Just last week, Courtney and I got to participate in what I call, I don't know, you've got these parents that are so in love with their school and every student in the school. They bring muffins and cookies and everyone is sitting there. And we also got to work with Principal Kirkley. And you can see in this report, I want to go back to school. I mean, I don't even know. They're outside, they're playing, there's games, there's learning. Of course, we can't, talk about the learning. PAC wanted to talk a little bit about the resource Kids These Days by Dr. Jody Carrington. So they had, DPAC had put some money for resources for parents. And so, yeah, so they were looking to see how many licenses that had been used, and they were seeing how well, so parents are using these resources. They were going to look at how many books that had been being supported there as well. Misty Sheldon, I believe, had a grant, so there was some money for some mental health supports. Yeah. So parents wanted to say thank you for that. This is a really, I mean, 4,757 in the checking, 1,745 just a raffle, 4,600 in their gaming. I mean, this is a PAC that raises money like nobody's business. They raffled a Blackstone at Christmas. All but one ticket was sold in the community. This raffle was like $1,800. It's the only raffle. My husband was like, we didn't win. Man, we didn't win. So I just want to say, like, these parents just bring a ton of passion. The librarian, and I think I've mentioned this before, she's a master librarian. She's a master's in library, but she's our librarian in community. She's been coming up to Vermilion Forks, and she did coding with these littles, and there's some money as well PAC donated to help supply VFE with some of these. What are these baby little coding, I don't know, robotics that they can code? It's fantastic for these
like
kids.
the kids?
Yes.
The name is escaping me at the moment.
So they've got a catalog, they're ordering, so teachers have complete kits, and you know, supporting that good learning. You can see they're outside and they're doing all kinds of things. They're in the place where they're talking to teachers about year-end trips and cross-country ski trips. Of course, there were some cold weather issues going on, but I honestly, I just, my head was spinning, and I thought for Principal Kirkley, I'm like, good for you. There's so much going on, and these parents are super involved. They've got an upcoming like elephant sale. So literally they're holding a garage sale. So these are some amazing parents doing really good fundraising, doing a lot of work for that school. I think they're the least paid, most biggest hearts, like, right, parents are there and they're giving this time. It was just, oh, my jaw was dropping. I thought, cool. So yeah, we have another meeting. It won't be till April. And so, yeah, so I'll keep you posted.
And Trustee Hoisington said he always wanted to go after you, so we're making that happen tonight.
She could sell anything, that girl. Anyway, so Nicola Camford PAC met on January 20th. Bert gave a nice report. He talked about the successful volleyball season Nicola Camford had, which is nice. Talked about the gingerbread house building, you know, that was a big success there at Nicola Camford. They were also prepping for their friendship dance for the winter solstice as well. So lots of practice time going into that. Primary skating is a big thing going on there as well. So they were taking the kids to, I think they were taking them to actually into the arena in Merritt, just because the arena in Chalouse. So there was some questions about that for next year. Yeah, they had big plans for the hoop dancing on January 21st. Some powwow drumming on the 22nd, and then the official powwow on the 29th. I know that the ski trip was also a very big success. On February 7th, they went to Harper Mountain. And I know the PAC kicked in to help with some of the busing as well. So that was very nicely received. They're looking at funding, the PAC's looking at funding some of the swimming in April. They're just trying to narrow it down with Bert on which classes they're are best to send. There is some split classes there, so they're trying to consider how that looks going forward. The other one is the PAC was going to send some money to the Come Read With Me program. So they want to keep that going. And the other big one was basketball was starting at that time. Since basketball is starting then, but I know it's completed just actually yesterday. But I'll report back on that for next time. But yeah, very active PAC, and lots of people there, and they meet again on the 18th, so be there for that.
What a great report.
Is that 18th of this month?
Yeah.
Because I think I'm gonna show up and maybe just like see what this
Yeah, you
place
can.
is about.
Yeah, you should. On a little pack tour.
Should, we really should switch it up. Kind of healthy. You just want
Trustee
my,
Kent Laidlaw.
No, my pack's fabulous. We have a very chill pack. So we met a couple weeks ago and our next meeting's not until April, so it's, you know, we don't do a whole lot of fundraising, so it's a lot easier. We do, however, give out money to teachers who ask, so that's what we did. We voted on that. We gave a number of teachers had put in requests and we were able to fulfill those. Principal Lawrence talked about the grade 9-10 trade sampler is happening this semester, and there's like 16 kids, I believe, and they're going to be working with Skies for their core courses. And then they're going to be doing 12 weeks of immersive shop programs. They're super, super excited about this. It's such a great opportunity for a lot of these kids to just try things that otherwise they maybe wouldn't get to do. SD58 rocks. We've also got 3 kids from Princeton going in April. The pack, one of the things that they decided to provide some money for the lunches for the program, so they were able to do that. Same thing, PSS had a ski day up at Apex, which went really well. I don't think anyone broke anything. Not sure, but I don't think so. It is, although I don't think we can say the same for all of the ski trips. There's band concert coming up next month on March 5th that will have the VFE band, PSS band, and the community band will all be playing together. So that's going to be a fun day if anyone wants to come out. And the Spain-Portugal trip planning is well underway for that. Fundraising is happening now, so you know that's a big push for that. I know that the PAC has been able to give some money to them as well towards their trip. But I think they're going to be doing dinner in the next couple of months. It'll be like a taste of Spain and Portugal. The kids put on a dinner for parents and community members who want to buy tickets. And you come out, they do a presentation on where they're going and things they're going to see. They feed you food from those countries, and there's a raffle. So as I get dates on that, I'll let you know. That's pretty much it.
Sounds bad, delicious, coming up. Okay.
Trustee Chenoweth.
Thank you. We'll start with Paulville. All the talk of the last pack was about the trip to Carnival in Quebec. But they also brought up some questions with the principal just around communication. They wanted, because there have been some staffing changes and they just really pressed hard about more communication. And I thought that the principal did a fabulous job of, respecting confidentiality as well as, trying to mete out information to parents. And we also, I shared that, along the lines of us growing from within or finding talent from within our ranks, and how young principals like Brandon are, a diamond in the rough, and they need nurturing from our parents, from the district, from other educators. And just to kind of remind them that don't push so hard on our young talent, because they'll end up leaving, right? And we don't want that. So, but Brandon's, he's almost like an old soul in there. So he's really, really good. And the parents know that he really cares for them and their kids. So it was really impressive. Skies, again, because they're from all over the province, most of their events they do with kids are virtual. So for example, they are planning in May a sexual health seminar for students and parents, which I thought was really interesting and a very creative way to address that topic with the youth. They're getting hats for all students of record, SOR. They're spending money on that. They're doing book orders. They're looking at Spirit Week fundraisers so that they can get out their wear to all the students in the school. And some other things they're looking for is things like renting trampolines around the province where students can travel with their families and meet other kids that they may see online. So they're pretty creative, but that's a great group. Thank you.
And for Merit Bench, their meeting was on February 4th. They've also had a ski trip as well. One of the things they're looking at, similar to Nicola Cantford, is sensory applications for the floor. And what I've suggested is they really need to be talking to Daryl. It's not simply a matter of let's go buy the cheapest product or a particular product. We really need to know that it's going to last. And I think they also talked to the principal there, also talked to the principal at Nicola Cantford about where they got theirs. But part of that is, as they're looking at that, we want to take into account the maintenance end of it as well and making sure it's a quality product. So they're working on that. They're also, I think their upcoming fundraisers, right? They just finished beef jerky. They're doing new felts, looking at gift cards from Valley Grays as a Valentine's Day piece. And then like in Princeton in April, they're going to be doing a large garage sale, having things show up on the Friday and the garage sale Saturday. So if anyone has some things they'd really like to part with, there's a garage sale coming up that you can participate in. They're also putting an ask out to the community. They're trying to get a class set of guitars for the school and the cases, and that would run about $8,200. So they're putting an ask out into the community to see how that might happen. Just a side note, John, you mentioned Collettville and their trip to Quebec. Being in Ottawa right now, I had the pleasure of 28 students from a French immersion school in District 42, and you could just see the energy of them, both in the plane and the things they're expecting. So I'm sure that's the same thing that our Collettville kids thought. And a lot of those kids, it was their first time on a plane. It was their first time out of the province. So the same, I'm sure, echoed with Collettville. But when you see that visually in the students, someday they might want a trustee to go with them, John, and, one who was an au pair at one point,
I'll say.
I was online with MSS PAC last night from here. Their next meeting is going to be March 11th. They talked quite a bit about the school calendar. And again, I think that decision we made, because parents were, some like it, some don't. The 2-week spring break works for some, but not for others. And, even at a high school level, if you have a child who has diverse learning needs, is that 2 weeks best for them? Or you have someone who's on the spectrum. How do you find that place for 1 or 2 days? So I think there's going to be some good, wholesome discussion with that as well. And as I say, they also went on their ski trip. And then the other thing that's coming up is the hockey tournament, which will be between, just let me grab that here. The grad hockey game is Wednesday, February 19th. So coming up, doors open at 7 to 8:45, and it's the grads versus teachers and parents. So it'll be something good to see as well, happening in the community and seeing that reach out with the grads. And the other piece, I think I sent to the superintendent, was where the grads were reaching out on around busing. They're looking at going down, I believe, to Rockridge. And so they're looking at some options on how to get students down there and how to put on a grad event that works with the most number of kids, as opposed to there was one thought about going up to Revelstoke and the ski hill there, but there's only about 20 grads that could afford that out of say 130. So the grandparents are looking at how do we do something that truly reaches all the kids as well. So that is my report. The next piece, I don't think we have any correspondence. There was no other reports. We do want to go on to the BCSTA motions, and I'll turn those over to Leah. Or to Jamie, sorry, because Jamie's the one who's worked on the resolutions committee.
These are my babies. Look at me. For the most part. All right, so there's 3 of them that we would like to put forward. Originally, we were going to put them through as a branch. But for reasons of voting technicalities, we decided in order to have them brought forward, we needed to kind of each take our own and put them forward as boards. The first one is, where am I going to start? I'll start with, sure. All right, so my first one here, I'll start with the fully funded exempt compensation. So while I wrote this, I wrote it with a lot of help from Dylan and from Gord because I don't know very much about this topic. So I'll give you the brief overview. Essentially, this was the one that we voted on in a special meeting because we tried to push it through as an emergent motion to PC. Essentially that the BCSTA requests that the Minister of Finance provide additional new funding to school districts to cover the increasing incremental costs associated. Oh my goodness, I'm reading the wrong one. That is not helpful. I'll try this again. They all sort of start the same, so they do look the same. There we go. Funding for exempt staff. Essentially, that we are asking for total cost of compensation to exempt staff based on actual labor costs per the exempt salary increase report submitted to BCPC, including increases that have already been committed to in previous budgets. Furthermore, future exempt staff salary increases should be fully funded in alignment with outcomes of the bargaining session. So essentially the provincial government had committed to covering salary increases. However, those shortfalls that we're seeing haven't been addressed yet in long and short. We did vote on this. We passed this to put through as an emergent motion to PC. I got a call yesterday from them. They will not be doing that. Thank you kindly for your submission, but they do not consider this emergent, which is fine. They'll push it forward to the AGM. So that one's been taken care of. The 2 that we need to vote on are the one I just half read to you. Which is the cybersecurity funding. So essentially that we're asking for new funding to cover the increasing incremental costs associated with information technology security. So one of the big issues facing districts, facing pretty much everybody today is cyber attacks. They're incredibly expensive to deal with. They're incredibly important to prevent. So, and it's not cheap to do that. So what we're asking for essentially is for funding that recognizes those needs. So I would need a motion for this one. And if it passes, then I will submit it for our upcoming AGM. I'll put the motion forward.
Moved by Trustee Ward, seconded by Trustee, I think I saw a hand. Rayner.
And then I have a question, Karen. I can't see this one. I don't know. Yeah, is there a rationale behind it that includes, like, I know there's a special committee provincially working on this right now, and I just don't want to duplicate what's going on. So did we reach out to BCSTA and did we ask Gordon Lee about what the BCSTA is doing currently to mitigate some of these funds? We know what we learned in October was that they were trying as a province to get a contractor to support the work. So I just don't want to duplicate. So I'm not, oh, sorry, go ahead, Gordon.
Well, if you recall, we got the nice letter from the minister who said, under the School Act, this is your responsibility, deal with it. And we're going, yes, it's our responsibility, but just as the province is needing to put additional resources into IT security at a cost, we need that same cost funded. If you talk to schools who have had you know, their systems go down for a week while they had to rebuild everything. That is costly. It is costly if you, I don't think any districts have paid a ransom yet, but we could not afford to pay a ransom. So we're saying there are additional costs there. There are additional costs in IT. Yes, it's our responsibility, but yes, government has to also recognize those costs in terms of cybersecurity. So that's, so
I think what I was asking was before well, I mean, I want to support you. I just wanted to ask the question. Did you as a resolutions committee seek information from the provincial body?
Don't think so. Again, we talked about these, they were, you know, the resolution committee talked about them, we worded them together, that type of thing. I'm not sure that anyone's reached out. Again, a lot of the wording I have in the rationale is pulled almost directly from that letter that board is, or that Chair Swan is referring to. Because they basically made my arguments for me, so.
So.
and these have come back to the board because there wasn't enough time for the branch would have missed the cutoff date by the time of the branch meeting. So he said each board will bring them forward at the resolutions committee. I think Everett, you were on that call as well.
Yeah.
And then when it gets, because we can always amend it afterwards to being a branch motion as well, but it was the difficulty was the branch bringing them forward. They would have missed the cutoff date. So that's why they've come back to us.
Thank you for it.
Trustee Rayner.
That's good, if as long as I think we should approve it because they will decide whether it's.
Yeah, and from my understanding, when they're submitted, they are reviewed by the AGM, like resolutions committee as well, BCSTA. So they'll come back and like I said, I've had multiple calls with them over a few of them, and they've come back and said, actually, this is already being looked at, or that type of thing. So I think at this point it's a throw at the wall and see what sticks type of scenario. But if we don't, then if we don't pass it as a board, it's not going to go through to the AGM at this time, and it can be amended on the floor if people have issues or if there's wording that needs changes.
Perfect.
We've got a mover and a seconder. Anyone opposed? Carried. And the last one.
Feeding futures, yes. So again, I do wish these had gone out in the agenda, but I'll briefly read this. Essentially, the BCST requests that the Ministry of Education and Childcare continue to provide funding to support the Feeding Futures school food program and treat it as an ongoing program past its current 3-year mandate. The current funding agreement expires in June 2025. So we did look into that. This is one that I did go back and forth with PC on. And essentially, the Feeding Futures, it will probably continue, like we're all crossing our fingers, but there's no guarantees that it will. Right now, as I said, it ends in 2025, or this June, I should say. And the rationale is essentially that poverty still exists and we still need food. So that's it's pretty straightforward. It's just asking for continuation and to make that program a more solid program instead of a rotating, see what happens every 3 years kind of thing. So
I move that we bring this to the BCSTA.
Seconded by John, I see. Any other discussion on this one? Anyone opposed? Carried.
I will upload both of those.
Good job, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dang, no
I
kid.
like writing, I don't love presenting.
You did a good job, Jamie.
So you're so easy to understand.
Clear.
Explain it like I'm fun.
Right.
So I don't think we have any, Cassie, I don't think anyone's online for public question period, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Ward.
Seconded, can't play bluff.
Okay, so anyone opposed? We're adjourned, and we'll meet in a couple of minutes to complete our closed meeting.
Thank you, Gordon.
Quick bio break. 2 minutes, Chair.
What the heck? It's only 11:20 at night. Yeah.
So you get